The argument had lasted 3 days, a slow, methodical peeling away of their relationship, layer by agonizing layer. Lyra had been fighting for air, for a space that Caspian had never permitted her to occupy alone. Her voice, usually soft, was hoarse from demanding one word: freedom. It was a word she hadn't truly believed in, but one she felt obligated to shout before the suffocation became permanent. Caspian, in contrast, remained effortlessly calm. He moved through their pristine, controlled apartment like a ghost who owned the lease on reality. Every syllable he uttered a surgical strike. He didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke with the unwavering certainty of a man who knew the inevitable outcome, treating her desperate pleas like a fever that would eventually break. "You confuse independence with lack of support, my love," he had said, pouring her herbal tea at precisely 72 degrees, adhering to their routine even during emotional apocalypse. Lyra stared at the tea, knowing the warmth was a trap. Every comfort he provided was a shackle disguised as an amenity. "It's not support, Caspian. It's surveillance. It's permission. I want to choose the wrong tea, just once, without consequence." He had merely smiled, a sad knowing curve of the lips. That smile was the most terrifying thing she had ever witnessed, because it always implied her eventual failure. Lyra knew her core weakness. She was afraid of the blank page of her own life. Caspian had filled it with his exquisite, precise handwriting. Her whole world was organized by his schedule, her emotions validated by his gaze, her self-worth dependent on his approval. She was perfectly conditioned. She had threatened to leave 100 times, but the thought of managing rent, utility bills, and the crushing ambiguity of daily choices always brought her to her knees, right back into his arms. The final night, she packed a single duffel bag, a symbolic act that felt more like a surrender than an escape plan. She laid the bag by the door, the cheap nylon, an insult to the apartment's polished mahogany floors. It felt like a line drawn in the sand, one she prayed he would cross. Caspian finally crossed it, but not with a confrontation. He walked past the bag, past her tear-streaked face, and returned holding a single, unmarked white envelope. "Lyra," he said, his voice dropping to a register of profound theatrical melancholy, "I love you too much to watch you suffer the illusion of entrapment. What is this?" She whispered, her heart hammering, expecting signed divorce papers or a one-way ticket to a distant, empty life. "It is the key to your freedom," he replied. "It is my last vicious act of kindness." She took the envelope. Inside, there was a single, heavy brass key, a key to a home she didn't recognize, and an address written on a minimalist card. "What address?" Lyra asked, confused. "Where is this?" "It is yours," Caspian stated. "A new apartment, 3 blocks from here. It's furnished, paid in full for 5 years, utilities included, prepaid food delivery for 6 months. He watched her face, his expression now one of profound, suffering nobility. "Everything you need to be independently you. No conditions, no contracts, no Caspian." Lyra felt a dizzying surge of disbelief. This was it. The door was open, the cage was gone. It was giving her exactly what she wanted. She ran to the address the next morning, her duffel bag feeling lighter than air, her heart pounding a rhythm of pure, unadulterated hope. The building was beautiful, modern, and exactly the architectural style she had always admired in passing a detail she'd mentioned once, fleetingly, 2 years ago. The key fit perfectly. She pushed the door open, expecting a blank slate, an empty canvas for her newly independent life. Instead, she gasped, stumbling backward against the doorframe. The apartment was pristine. It was immaculate. It was perfectly, unsettlingly familiar. The walls were painted the same pale, non-committal gray she had chosen 3 years ago. Before Caspian told her it was too moody, the sofa was the exact plush dove-gray sectional she currently owned, facing the exact same angle towards the window. Even the book selection on the floating shelf, the classics she had read in college, were arranged in the precise order he had established for aesthetic harmony. She walked into the kitchen, her breath catching. The cutlery was stored in the drawer organizer, placed diagonally the way Caspian insisted on to maximize space. The refrigerator was stocked according to his nutritional efficiency guideline, labeled with dates and calorie counts. The linens in the bedroom closet were folded into perfect military-style squares. The bed was made with the 5-pillow configuration he preferred, Lyra felt a slow, cold dread seep through her initial shock. This wasn't freedom. It was a replica of her cage. She frantically searched the apartment, opening every drawer, checking behind every mirror. Looking for a note, a hidden camera, something to prove his continued presence. Nothing. Everything was new, sterile, untouched by him, except for the absolute, devastating fidelity to his taste, his routine, his control. He hadn't just given her an apartment, he had given her his system without him. She realized the viciousness of the act. He had stripped away her most crucial external motivation, Caspian himself, and left her with the only thing that kept her functioning, the suffocating routine he had perfected. He had engineered her environment to such perfection that she couldn't choose to live differently even if she wanted to. She was bound to the structure, not the man. Lyra sank onto the familiar gray sofa, tears blurring the edges of the familiar art print on the wall, a muted landscape that didn't risk inspiring strong feelings. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She wanted to call an old friend, someone from her life before Caspian. Her finger hovered over the contact for Sarah, her college roommate, but a wave of paralyzing uncertainty washed over her. What would I say, she thought. How do I explain 3 years of absence? Do I tell her I've been organizing silverware diagonally? The paralyzing self-consciousness that Caspian had so expertly replaced with routine returned with the force of a tidal wave. She put the phone down. She checked the refrigerator inventory. The milk expires tomorrow. That was a tangible, manageable problem. The immediate need for a task, a rule, trumped the abstract need for human connection. The training was complete. Suddenly, the silence of the new apartment was deafening. It wasn't the comfortable, managed silence of their old home, but a cavernous, empty echo. She tried to cry, but the tears felt manufactured, a violation of the calm she was now programmed to maintain. Her emotional collapse didn't come in a shout or a dramatic gesture, but in the quiet, terrifying realization of her own internal emptiness. Lyra stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city, a different view, but the same cold, indifferent world. She realized that by giving her freedom, Caspian had proven his most important, most cynical point. She wasn't ready for it. She was incapable of using it. His kindness was a final, damning judgment. You ask for freedom, Lyra, here it is. Now watch yourself drown in it. That was the viciousness. He knew her limitations better than she did, and he had used his departure to cement her dependency on his system, not his presence. She was tied to an invisible tether, anchored not by Caspian's hands, but by the crippling weight of her own fear of choice. That evening, she found herself microwaving one of the perfectly portioned, labeled meals from the prepaid delivery service. The aroma was exactly what she expected. The flavor was precisely balanced. There was no risk of disappointment. The stability was maddening. She wanted to open the windows and throw the meal out, but the internalized guilt over waste was too strong. She sat at the dining table, alone, staring at the empty chair across from Hertha, chair Caspian would have occupied. It wasn't him she missed. It was the rule he embodied. The rule that dictated the correct way to hold a fork, the acceptable speed of chewing, the appropriate conversational topic. Without him, the rules were still there, echoing in the silence, but they lacked the necessary authoritative voice to truly enforce them. Her psychological break manifested as a small, deliberate act of defiance. She took the salt shaker and placed it 3 inches off its center mark on the table. She waited, heart racing, for the reprimand. It didn't come. She waited for the panic to subside, for the shame of the transgression to take over. Didn't. Only a vast, terrifying indifference remained. The indifference was worse than the anxiety. Anxiety meant she cared about the system. Indifference meant the system was dying and she was going down with it. Lyra pushed the chair back and ran to the cabinet where she knew the spare cleaning supplies were kept. She grabbed the bottle of disinfectant spray. Its scent was sharp and sterile, another note in Caspian's symphony of control. She began spraying the table, scrubbing the immaculate surface with a dishcloth, attempting to erase the memory of the off-center salt shaker. She scrubbed harder, frantically, until her knuckles were white. The surface gleamed, but the stain of her disobedience remained in her mind. She moved to the counter, polishing the chrome fixtures. Then the glass door of the oven, working until she was sweating and breathless. She wasn't cleaning the apartment. She was cleaning her mind, trying to scrub away the sudden, terrifying ambiguity of being alone. After an hour, the entire apartment was spotless, more perfect than even Caspian would have demanded. She stood in the center of the living room, panting, surrounded by the physical manifestation of his ultimate control. The silence returned, heavy and judgmental. She looked at the perfectly arranged books, the diagonally placed cutlery, the untouched, perfect life he had gifted her. The gift was a mirror. He wanted her to look into it and see the depth of her own weakness, to see that she couldn't create life, only inhabit his template. Lyra walked back to the front door, reaching for the handle. Leave. A small, desperate voice in her head urged, "Run, but run to where?" Every place outside felt like a less organized version of this apartment, a version without the 5 years of guaranteed safety. She realized that Caspian had ensured her only logical choice was to stay. The prepaid food was a tether. 5 years of rent were a chain. Perfectly replicated decor was the blueprint for her inescapable mind. She didn't call him. She didn't need to. He knew exactly what she was doing. He knew she would be cleaning, organizing, and ultimately staying put. He was winning, even in absentia. His control had transcended physical proximity. The next morning, she awoke at 6 a.m., precisely the time Caspian's alarm would have gone off. She made the bed in the 5-pillow configuration, showered at the prescribed temperature, and went to the kitchen. She checked the nutritional efficiency guideline label on the next prepaid meal and prepared it. She sat down to eat, staring at the perfect, centered salt shaker. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but she ate the meal anyway. Lyra understood the true viciousness now. It wasn't about hurting her. It was about ensuring her permanent stability within his predetermined boundaries. He had sacrificed his presence, the one thing she believed she was fighting to. Secure his permanent influence over her mind. His act of kindness had shattered her ability to ever seek independence again, proving that her true self was a fragile thing that required his rigid infrastructure. The moment of realization was the collapse. She wasn't broken by a fight, but by the crushing weight of a gift she was too weak to use. She was free, and she realized freedom was the most terrifying, unmanageable risk of all. She finished the efficient meal, then, methodically, she began to organize the new batch of correspondence that arrived in the mail slot. The apartment was silent, except for the soft rustle of paper. She was back in the routine. Her mind, once a battleground, was now a quiet, perfectly maintained archive of Caspian's rules. She found herself subconsciously checking the clock, wondering what Caspian was doing if he was auditing her progress from afar. She knew he wasn't. He didn't need to. The system was self-monitoring now. Lyra stood up and walked to the window, finally accepting the view. The chaos outside no longer looked tempting, only exhausting. She smiled faintly, a hollow, obedient expression. The panic was gone, replaced by a deep, unwavering sense of peace. The peace of absolute resignation. It's a peace of knowing every moment of the next 5 years was already accounted for. Caspian had given her the ultimate assurance. He had left her alone, but he had left her safe. She was his flawless creation, existing in his perfectly replicated world, a testament to his unbreakable, obsessive control. Lyra began wiping down the counter again, just for the sake of the routine. The pivotal moment had passed, leaving behind a profound emotional void. Her independence had lasted less than 24 hours. His vicious act of kindness was complete. She was home. She was safe. She was entirely, permanently broken. The psychological drama was over, leaving only the beautiful, terrifying stillness of his enduring influence. If this exploration of control, dependence, and the shattering moment of truth resonated with you, show your support. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio.